Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine, and welcome to Punchline Talks. Today I'm joined by James Horwood, director and co-owner of Kitchen Garden Foods. Hi, James. Welcome to Punchline Talks.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks very much.
Good.
Kitchen Garden has been a huge success over the years. I know you've got around 15 staff, a turnover over £1 million. Could you tell us a little bit about the company, please, while I bring up a few pickies and products, if that's all right?
Yeah, of course. So Kitchen Garden's been around now since 1989. In fact, the year I was born, Kitchen Garden was set up by Barbara Monet. She lived in Oakridge near Bisley in Stroud and started making jam essentially from her home in the kitchen and using fruit from local hedgerows, and sold a bit to the local butcher and kept making more, and then ventured out into farmers markets. And in fact, her and her husband, Robin Monet, who joined her in the business, actually set up some of the first farmers markets in the UK. And then, over the years, the range has grown substantially. The customer base has grown substantially, and the Kitchen Garden brand was always founded on the principle of not selling to the supermarkets. So our jams, our chutneys, our marmalades, pickles, sauces, all of that really good stuff was sold exclusively to independent farm shops and delis. So over the years, more and more customers came on board. We gained organic certification as well many years ago. So launched an organic range. And then ventured out into private label manufacturing for the likes of English Heritage and RSPB and Bath Fine Cheese Company and many others. And here we are, 31, 32 years later with, a range of, over 100 different products, hundreds and hundreds of customers and over 100 awards for what we do.
Wow, so absolutely amazing. How did you get into the business then, James? And how did you get involved and become a co-owner?
So about 7 years ago, I was working in property before I worked at Kitchen Garden Foods, and before that, 5-6 years in sales. So I was working in property, and I absolutely loved my job. I loved it, but I hated the company I worked for. I just couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand the company I worked for. Big, huge national company, and everything just felt wrong. And so I had a really bad day. And one day I phoned up First Base Employment in Stroud. I'd never used an agency before. I thought, I'm having a terrible day. I need something else. I don't care at this stage what it is. I can move on to a different career path at some point. I just want to get out of this place. So I rang First Base and I said, look, I'm having a really bad day. I want to get out. I love my job, but I just want to get out of this company. And they said, oh, we'll have a look. We'll see, we'll see what's around. Send us your CV and what you can do and stuff like that. And they came back to me a few days later and said, oh, there's a company in Stroud, and a food manufacturing company, and they're looking for some help growing some sales. Do you think you might want to just go and meet them and have a chat? And I said, oh yeah, great. So went down to Kitchen Garden. Eventually, my employer at the time eventually let me have some time off to go and do this interview, with them and meet these guys. So met Robin and Barbara, and I remember so well going down, sitting in this very small meeting room with Robin and Barbara, who were no suits, just casual clothes. The company was, I immediately got the sense of, small family, and just like, just seemed to have quite a lot of love, in the company, and just immediately fell in love with what Robin and Barbara were doing, with the passion for the brand, Barbara's story and the success behind it. And they explained that at that point, they just launched Wolfies, which is one of our brands, and they were looking for some help with some sales. Anyway, a few weeks passed, and I think they met a few other people and contacted me and said, look, do you want to come and work for us? And I said, God, I'd love to, absolutely love to. So joined as a sales manager, sales and marketing manager for them about seven years ago, I think it was, and helped grow their sales and brought on some new customers and got a few bigger customers on board. And then a few years after that, probably maybe 2 years after that, 3 years after that, they sat down with me and said, how are you getting on? What do you think? And I said, look, I love it here. It's fantastic. I don't really have any ambitions to leave or do anything else. I just like it here. And they said, do you fancy a piece of the pie, so to speak? And I said, well, I'd love to, I'd really love
or
to.
Jam, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I said, I'd love to. So so there we are. So took over the business with James Monet, who's their nephew, for 4 years, just over 4 years ago. So I was 27 at the time, and took it over with him, which was, a bit of a baptism of fire, really. I have my own photography business on the side, so I had a small, a small bit of experience running business, but nothing of this size, with this many staff, and we manage over 1,000 different ingredients, and it's a very complex, very tricky business, especially dealing with multiple brands and different types of customers and stuff. So it's a bit of a baptism of fire. Robin and Barbara, really guided us along the process. We had a bit of business coaching and stuff like that to help us along, as well. And that was it. The rest is history, as they say. Sadly, we lost Barbara a few years ago. She had a long battle with cancer, which was, really difficult for a lot of the guys actually who'd worked with her for a very long time. Some of our staff been there 15, 17 years, so sadly we lost Barbara. Robin remained as a non-exec director, but retired shortly after. So yeah, now pretty much it's just James and I and our strong team moving stuff forward.
So what would you say was the biggest lesson that you learned when you took over?
Ask questions. The biggest lesson I learned was to just ask questions, and don't be afraid, really, to ask questions. And that's the only way you can learn stuff, as far as I'm concerned. And you can do all the school and all the university and all the essays, but until you actually get stuck into doing something, that's how most people learn. And I left school at 16, 17 with kind of, just a handful of GCSEs and no A levels, and didn't go to university and don't have a degree. And, didn't really apply myself at school because I just wanted to work. I just had, a yearn for working, and I was bunking off school to go and work. When I kind of started sixth form, I thought this would be a great idea. I'll do sixth form. And I was bunking off lessons to go and work. And I thought, I'd just give this up and go and work and get a job. And so the biggest lesson I learned really was to, ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask questions, because hopefully that knowledge that I learned, I'll be able to pass on when people are asking me questions about stuff. So I think it's a good thing to do.
What about the pandemic? Obviously, when that happened, a lot of the shops shut. I know that a lot of delis stayed open. How did you cope with that? Did you furlough lots of staff? What did you do?
Yeah, I remember it well. It was bizarre. Our sales stopped overnight. They when they formally announced that first lockdown in middle of March last year, I think it was, I thought to myself, God, this is quite serious. Before that, we were kind of all singing happy birthday while washing our hands, weren't we? And it was quite jolly. And now suddenly, you must stay in your home and everything's shut. And nothing can prepare you for that. Nothing can prepare you for all of your customers just turning off overnight and there being a global pandemic. And I'm sure there are large companies out there who have some kind of pandemic plan in place, but we didn't, and other smaller companies won't. So, that was, again, just a huge baptism of fire. I remember it was the night Boris Johnson announced the lockdown. I started to feel really ill. I went to bed, thought I just had a cold. It was about the time of year when I get a cold, changing of the seasons, but went to bed and just couldn't get up in the morning. I was stuck in bed. I was achy. I was sweating. Just absolutely horrendous. The worst I've ever been. And, but during that, I just remember led on the sofa having a meeting over Zoom, or over WhatsApp, I think, with Robin and James, trying to form a plan of, what are we going to do? It felt like we were kind of in this ship, just getting battered about, and things were going overboard, and it was crazy. So we made the decision to furlough all of our staff immediately. We came up with 3 key objectives. It was to save jobs, save cash, and push the business forward. Now, you might think, God, why are you trying to push a business forward? You just want to rescue it. But doing all 3 of those things at the same time would have helped, help keep us safe. So we furloughed all of our staff. That April, just James and I went in to run the business. So it was just the 2 of us. I'd only just recovered from sickness. and I was completely knackered. The two of us went in for April. We were making the stuff, labeling the stuff, answering the phone, doing deliveries, getting ingredients, and that was a great lesson for me, because James spends a lot of time in production, but I spend less, and learning how to make all the products and all the intricacies of all of the products was great. So we worked just April ourselves, which was really intense. Our sales didn't drop off as much as we thought. And then we slowly trickled staff back throughout the course of the year until last September, when we brought everybody back.
What was the biggest lesson there then? I mean, what about when the staff came back? Did you have problems there, or was everybody on board? Or
there was definitely nerves and uneasiness, because we were all nervous, because we were a lot of us were nervous about getting ill and passing it on. And in the very early stages of COVID, there wasn't much information to say what would happen if somebody who wasn't vulnerable would get it. So there was some nerves in there. I think people were quite relieved to come back. There were some members of staff who were off work for 6 months. So we needed to make sure that we helped them come back to work, not just thrust them straight back into it, phased returns. We created 2 teams, an A team and a B team. So we would bring some guys in for a month, furlough them, bring the other team in for a month, and keep doing that. That meant everybody had a fair opportunity to earn 100% of their salary. And it meant if one team got COVID, we could bring the other team in to run the business. So it was really just, almost kind of not making it up as we go along, but just, taking each day and each hour as it come, and forming decisions based on kind of the evidence that we had, and we came through it unscathed, really. Well, I say unscathed, the business is still standing. We lost a lot of sales. We probably lost at least a third of our turnover. We relied heavily on the furlough scheme, and we got a grant and stuff like that. But we're here. We didn't make any redundancies. One part of our business actually grew. Our kitchen garden retail jars actually grew during the pandemic. Everything else shrunk by quite a lot. We kind of reviewed it month or two ago and said, if we can get through that, we can get through anything. We've been hit in the past by huge floodings. I think back in 2008, wrecked everything. We've lost big customers. We've lost great staff, but if we can get through the pandemic, probably we can get through anything.
I think that's the big learning curve here. I feel the same way. And lots of other business owners I talk to feel the same way. If we can get through this, then we can get through anything. And it is about sticking together, that team of people like you, obviously, yourself and James have done. Let's talk a bit more about your products, if that's okay. One of the ones I know very well is Wolfie's. I'm just trying to find a picture of it. Goodness gracious, I can't seem to find the shots now. But you've got Wolfie's. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And that's not Wolfie's.
Yeah, so Wolfie's was a brand we launched just before I joined the business, so about 7 or 8 years ago. And the concept is instant porridge pots, but each one has a little pot of jam or marmalade inside. So there was a clear gap in the market for, a porridge pot with a pot of something else inside. There's the Oats So Simples and the Kellogg's and all those other ones, which are fine, but and it seemed logical to do them with a pot of jam inside, because we make jam. So we launched it really as an idea mainly for festivals. So Barbara's daughter and her husband ran a festival catering business and a festival security business. So we developed this kind of with them in mind to help feed their staff, something that was hot and filling. And they are big pots, so they're perfect for kind of, the great British rainy summers. And we launched the brand with 3 flavors, and immediately, Waitrose ears pricked up, and they took on a listing for some of the products, and then GWR Trains also took on a listing as well, and then loads of independents and independent coffee shops and retailers as well. So you can see here, this is the vegan strawberries and cream and 2 other vegan ones which we launched just over 2 years ago, which have been phenomenally successful for those who are who are following a dairy-free lifestyle. They're made with whole rolled oats, and we use a really nice creamy coconut milk powder in them, which doesn't have too much coconut flavor, which was important to us. And then each one has a pot of our jam in as well. So the brand has just been, it's just blown up in the last 7 years, and it becomes, more of a success with, British Airways listing just in September, October last year, which we're now starting to see, take off, excuse the pun. And so, a real kind of feather in the cap, and now probably forms just over a third of our turnover, something like that.
Wow. And could imagine what you would have done if all the planes haven't been grounded.
Exactly. Yeah. Would have been nice.
Would have been zooming.
It would have, but it's okay, because as a small business, if you got all of their forecast all in one go, it would be, we would manage, but it would be some work to do to fulfill it. The nice thing with planes taking off slowly and gradually over the coming however long, 6-7 months, means volumes will build slowly, so we can manage it a lot better. So actually, that's the best possible outcome for us.
I remember going on a train to GWR trains to London on a business trip, and I remember seeing your porridge, and I must admit, on the train I thought, fair play, that is really cool. Gloucester,
yes,
along to London, all the suits there, first class carriage, they're eating the porridge. I just think that is great. Well done.
Thank you. And it's great, it's great for Stride, and GWR like to try and source as much stuff as close to the tracks as possible, which I think is fantastic. It's such a good idea to, offer something different to the Oatso or the Coca-Colas or the Mars bars, so, and it's great for Stride, and we supply a complimentary version exclusively for first class travelers on GWR as well. So, it's great for our little town and our small business.
You also then launched NAF. And I thought that was very brave. I remember getting the press release from you guys, and I've just brought up a picture now. NAF, how did you come up with that brand name, and why NAF?
Yeah, so great question. This is a real kind of something completely different. Wolfie's at the time was fairly risky for us as a traditional jam maker, to come up with a brand like Wolfie's, which was quite fun and playful. NAF just pushes it to a whole new level. James and I, when we took over the business, we obviously adopted the Kitchen Garden brand and the Wolfie's brand. They weren't ours. We didn't create them. We've developed them a lot, and the flavors and the product and some of the redesigns and all of that stuff. But we really wanted to launch something that was us, and something that, we could get our teeth stuck into, and just create a cool brand and launch it and see what happens. So we decided to give that a bit of a push during lockdown. Now, looking back in hindsight, what a crazy time to do that while trying to keep the ship afloat, so to speak. So NAF is all about high impact colors, really nice flavors of different pickles and sauces and rubs, and a few other things in the pipeline for the future as well. And this is aimed at obviously a younger demographic than the traditional kitchen garden preserves, or at least we thought it was. However, judging on some of the people who are buying this stuff, maybe we're slightly wrong with that. But we worked with Robin and Barbara's son, Oliver, who's a freelance designer and illustrator, and a good mate of ours, one of our best mates, and said, right, we want to develop this new brand. We don't know what we want to call it. We know what we want the products to be. We don't know how we want it to look. So we all got together, and we were having a chat and, talking about different ideas and names. And it's always hard coming up with a name for something, because it never really sticks until it's been around for a while. So the idea of the brand is to have something fun and to kind of push the boundaries and be a bit tongue-in-cheek, and kind of take the mickey out yourself a bit, and we get that. There's loads of hot sauce on the market. There's loads of rubs on the market. We get that, but, these are good. We've got 3 decades of experience, and 100 awards for making this kind of stuff, so we can back up this fun, playful branding with really high quality products. So we were sat there talking about branding and names and things like that, and some tongue-in-cheek stuff. And somebody said something, and I remember somebody else saying, "Oh, it just sounds a bit naff," and I kind of sat there and thought naff, and I said, I quite like that. That's quite fun. Naff is a word associated with something that's just not very good, but for some reason that felt quite cool. I thought maybe we should run with that. And what it also fitted in with was the idea of these products not just being another fridge filler. So we came up with this idea of these products being not another fridge filler, and NAF just coincidentally was an acronym of this Not Another Fridge Fill. And we were like, well, let's just run with it and see what happens. So we came up with a name, and then we set Ollie working on branding ideas, and we sent him over loads of cool stuff that we liked from other brands and colors and things like that. And everything he came back with from our ideas were good, because Ollie is very good, but neither James and I were getting really excited about it. Nothing really got my heart pumping. And I said to him, these are great, but I'm just not connecting with them, and he said, look, I'll tell you what, let me just come up with something, completely on my own, I'll take into consideration some of it is. And then he came up with a logo similar to the one we've got on our packaging now, and then we developed it further. And here we are now. And we launched that officially in middle of January, beginning of February. Got some stockists on board as well. It's been presented to the likes of Ocado and some of the other multiples too. Starting to build up a following on social media and through the website orders and things like that. So it's a bit of a plaything for us at the moment, but I'm already quite excited to see where it's going to go.
I think it's great, mate. I really do. And sometimes you just got to dare to be different.
Yeah.
That's the way we've all got to drive our business, isn't it, really? I'm kind of running out of time now. One question I've got to ask you, a little throw out there. What kind of book are you reading at the moment?
Good question. So most of the stuff I read, I don't tend to read novels and stuff. I always find reading quite difficult. I can read, but I always find it really hard to concentrate on reading, which is probably why I wasn't, too tuned in at school, because there was a lot of reading. I have to have pure silence to be able to focus on reading. But some of the stuff that books that I flick through. So there's the Etymologicon, which is a book all about words and the history of words and etymology of words, and where, sayings such as "you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours," where those come from. And I'm also I also like flicking through occasionally a book called What Everybody Is Saying by Joe Navarro. Joe Navarro is an ex-FBI body language expert, and this book explains body language and all the intricacies and all of that stuff. So that kind of stuff really fascinates me. Stuff I can pick up, read a chapter or two, gain some knowledge, and then put away for a bit.
Fantastic. Okay, James, we're running out of time now. So your top 3 business tips. What are they, please, sir?
Good question. So my first one harks back to what I said earlier, really. Ask questions. It doesn't matter whether you're setting up your own business, whether you've been running a business for 30 years, whether you're the director of a £1 billion company or a £500 company. Ask questions. If you're not sure, keep asking until you get the answer. Get people to explain why stuff works in that way. I find that incredibly useful. Ask, because that's the way you'll learn, and that's the way you can get through, new tasks and new stuff like that. My second is probably a saying that one of our business coaches gave us, Steve Lobley. Excellent guy, really charismatic, amazing stories, and he helped us a lot. And one of the things he said to us in business is that turnover is vanity and profit is sanity. And people will have heard that before, but it's so true. You could have the biggest turnover in the world, but if you're losing money, you're a busy fool. And it's not all about profiteering and making as much money as you can. That makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. But turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, and it's profit that will drive your business forward and grow and expand and employ more people at the end of the day. So that one's a key one for me, and I think about that a lot. And the last one is really just about doing the right thing. It's about there's the right thing from a moral point of view, and there's a right thing from a business point of view, from a commercial point of view, and sometimes those things conflict, especially if when it comes to, I don't know, businesses will have had to make redundancies this year, without question. We've seen that, and from a moral point of view, that is a very, very difficult thing to do. From a commercial point of view, it is the right thing to do to secure the company for the future. Otherwise, nobody's got a job and the business is gone. So it's about doing the right thing and kind of sticking with that decision, as long as you're comfortable that what you're doing is the right thing. Another example, we were asked to manufacture some jams and marmalades for a very, very, very big, well-known kind of set of department stores. And they were happy with our jars. They were happy with our recipes. The price was excellent. The minimum order quantities were exactly what we wanted. The delivery points were exactly what we wanted. Everything was exactly what we wanted. apart from the business would have doubled our turnover overnight, and we turned it down. We had to turn it down. And, you know, some of my mates said to me, you're mad. You know, why are you doing that? And I said, you know, I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to work for myself and my staff and our company. And you can tie these things into contracts, but when these contracts come to an end, you've now lost half your turnover. You know, and that was the right thing to do. You know, turning down £1 million worth of business was the right thing to do, you know, because it would have, you know, caused us all sorts of headaches potentially. So, you know, do the right thing.
James Horwood, Kitchen Garden Foods. Really, always great to talk to you, mate. And
thank you.
Your continued success. Thanks
Thank you very much.
Joining Punchline Talks. Cheers.